Welcome to another episode of the STB podcast. I am excited today because we take a little departure from our normal podcast guest of athletes with one of the best behind the scenes guys in the business, Usman Kamara, the director of player development for Oregon, who I've gotten to know, over the last 3 or 4 years in my relationship with the university, and thought he would be awesome to shed some light on what it's really like being director of player development in the NIL age. Usman, thanks for joining us, man. I appreciate you being on.
No, the pleasure is all mine. I appreciate it, DDA. Always a pleasure to work with you, man. The insight, the direction, that you share with our guys, the passion that you have for this work. So appreciate you having me on and happy to do it.
Hey, right back at you. I think one of the unique things in my position as I go around to different schools is you see how everyone does their business, how professional they are, how much they care, and you are right at the top of my list in terms of the work that you do at the University of Oregon. First, give people a little background on yourself. Obviously you played football, but a little bit about where you grew up and what led you to University of Oregon.
Yeah, so I'm a Harrisburg, Pennsylvania native, Harrisburg kid, 717 through and through. My mom is from Philadelphia, the Philadelphia area, and my dad's actually from Sierra Leone, West Africa. I have a little sister who now has twin boys, so I'm uncle, reached uncle status officially. Actually just turned 28 the other day, so definitely feeling that uncle status. But like I said, Harrisburg native, went to West Virginia University out of high school, played football there for 5 years. Got an undergrad degree in sport management. Got a master's degree paid for my last season there in 2020. Got an MBA. And then right after my football career, stepped into off the field admin. Was a GA, finishing that MBA for about 6 months, and then or earned the assistant director of player enhancement. That's what they called it there. There's a bunch of different names for the role. But I was the assistant director of player enhancement, student athlete enhancement, really overseeing all the freshmen and newcomers, all the transfers in that first year that they're with our program. The liaison internally and externally for all their needs and anything that's going on with them. I was quickly promoted to be the director after our director stepped down. Kind of a trial period from January 21 to March to see if I could handle the thing and or the role and the responsibilities, and I guess I passed the test. So was promoted to be the associate director of that. And then was able to hire number two in my original role. Did that for about another 8 months, and then got a call from Oregon, from Coach Dan Lanning and his staff to see what my interest was in coming out west to be a Duck. And so I've been here for 3 years now. This is my third season. We've been successful every year that I've been here. And it's really a testament to Coach Lanning, the people that we have in our building, the culture that he set. And this role, as you probably have gathered, around the country, it's not respected at every organization. And so I always tip my cap and give respect to Coach Lanning for really seeing the work that we do, and the importance that's in it. And I think that's devoted to his humble beginnings. Him being a high school educator himself, in a past life, so to speak. But really gives me and my team the full reign to fully invest in these guys and bring the best resources that there is, to open their eyes and give them perspective, and then essentially turn that into success for them.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, I think one thing you said about it, it's not as respected everywhere, right? Like the role, which is crazy to me because in some ways I don't think there's a role that encapsulates or has a pulse on what the guys are going through on the field and off the field as much as the player development, right? When we're thinking about trying to make these guys great young men off the field as well as on, it's really where you see who's serious about it and who's not by what they do with the player development. From your vantage point, what is the biggest thing you're trying to instill with these guys, non-football related, in terms of the most important non-football related skill that you're trying to instill upon the Oregon guys in your role as director of player development?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's one skill that's more important, than the other, but it's kind of hard to say or to point out some skills that don't attribute to football or don't correlate with football, and that's the beautiful thing about the sport that we love and we care about and we play. It teaches you a lot of life lessons. But some of the things that we're trying to pour into these guys, obviously for the sake of the podcast, financial literacy is number one. Because it's a new day and age. I didn't receive NIL. I was about a year or two too short or too late, or too early, I guess you could say. And so I didn't get to get the glories or the resources of NIL, but really just trying to put a great infrastructure around these guys so that they're safe, they're making the right decisions, they have the right people in their corner, advising them, and that they're responsible, right? And so taxes are a thing, understanding that, and as an 18-year-old, some 17-year-old, because there's some high school kids that are getting paid now, you may not, I mean, you honestly, it's not for you to understand because you've never had to deal with this before.
Yeah,
And the demographic that, we recruit and that get to this level for the most part, don't have, this status in their family bloodline. And so who do they need to turn to? They can't turn to mom. They can't turn to dad. They can't turn to uncle or aunt or grandma or grandpa because they've never had to manage, these type of assets before. And so, and that's no knock on them. That was the goal from the jump to be able to provide for your family. So now, how can we put our arms around you as an organization to lead you down the right path? So financial literacy being one, I would say purpose, value, goal setting. Those are at the top of the list. Mental health, relationship building and networking, accountability. Communication skills, very very important. Again, you can correlate them to during their playing time, and then when they leave. Self awareness is huge, and identity. Understanding who you are. Football or the sport that you play is not who you are; it's just what you do. That's what gives you the platform to really, exemplify what you are, who you are, and what you stand for. So those are the types of things that we're always trying to build into our guys. Adaptability as well. Everything isn't going to be, smooth sailing. Everything isn't going to go according to plan. But how are you able to adapt and be fluid enough to still reach success? Yes.
awesome, awesome. And I think I would assume as you were talking about this, I was thinking, separately, what kind of benefit do you think it is to you having played college football at a high level and been in the locker room? And as much as and we've joked about it before, man, about being born a couple years too early, right? Um, I would assume that gives you an advantage though in relating to the guys and helping them understand the opportunity that they have, right? That they have with NIL and just taking you seriously. And I think it helps, even though you talked about being unk status, you're not my age, you didn't play 30 years ago, right? I
Right.
think, it's one thing if someone who played in 1990s talking about, oh, I wish, NIL and the opportunity, but someone who just missed the cutoff and is still a relative peer to the guys, how do you feel like that is an advantage to you?
Yeah, it's a blessing, honestly, and I thank God every day for the opportunity to, be my age and have the responsibilities that I do, and I don't take them lightly. And it's like I said, it's a blessing. And I think that it's a double-edged sword. You have to tread the line very lightly, toe the line very lightly, because one step in this direction, you're too unprofessional and you're friends with the players, and then it's one step in this direction, it's oh well, you think you know everything, or you don't understand, and so it's like how do you find that happy medium, all the way to even how I present myself, how I dress. All
Yeah,
in all, I just want to be a role model to these guys, a guy that can be a professional but still have swagger, still handle himself the right way, understand everything that they're going through. I mean, I just went to the Gunna concert for my birthday, and
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah,
and still being able to take care of my responsibilities. Obviously, we're in a CFP run,
hmm,
but understanding that work life balance a little bit. There really isn't any balance, but I was able to go to the show just with our schedule. And then still make it back for our game and handle all my responsibilities. That's just an example of
yeah,
how I just try to walk the walk and talk the talk. And so it's understanding, their mindset, where they're coming from, what's going on in the locker room, being able to read the tea leaves, and again, give that information to our coaching staff where it's needed, when it's needed, because not everything needs to be reported to even their position coach. Maybe it's just a phone call to home and just to make sure that their family is up to date with what's going on and just to check in on these guys. And I try to hold our relationships, the relationships that I have with the players, very near and dear to my heart. And so I want to keep that trust, and so that they trust me and they can come to me with their insecurities. When they can be vulnerable around me, but also know I'm always shoot them straight, right? And
Yeah.
I'm not gonna give them a cookie cutter answer what they're supposed to do. I'm gonna be realistic, because I have been in their shoes and I have walked the walk. So just being able to have that frame of mind, especially when I'm communicating to the coaching staff, helping them understand, how these players are thinking, or different speakers like yourself, when you come in, and how you should tailor your message, or what should be in your slide deck and things of that nature to grasp these guys' attention. Just because it's a new age, and we all have to be coachable.
Yep. That's awesome. That's awesome. And what in this new age, what would you say you feel like separates the guys? Because you've been there long enough to see
Hmm.
outcomes, right?
Right.
Where some guys are maximizing this opportunity, other guys aren't fully maximizing and reaching their potential. What's the difference you see between the guys that are maximizing and the guys who aren't?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this is in everything. There's only a small window of opportunity to grasp like true success out of any opportunity. And the guys that really are in tune, are immersed in our program, like they're participating in everything, and they want to be around, those are the guys that ultimately reach success. Those are the guys that build the most relationships. Those are the guys that learn the most because they're actually participating in their really interacting, within our organization, and the resources, the people that we bring around, and things of that nature. And in turn, those are the guys that end up employed, whether that be in the NFL, whether that be corporate America, whether that be as an entrepreneur. Those are the guys that always land on their feet, and more often than not, the guys that kind of let the time pass them by, and they're where they're supposed to be or when it's required. Those are the guys that kind of go home after 3 to 5 years, and as though the last 3 to 5 years never happened. And we're still going to always, do our due diligence and help them out. But it definitely is frustrating, when it's like, man, you had 5 years, 4 years to take advantage of all the things that we've put in front of you, and even the extracurriculars outside of the schedule, the day-to-day schedule, or the mandated schedule, but you didn't take advantage of them. And so it's a lot harder. I always tell our guys, like, it's a lot harder to get your foot in the door, to get that alumni or that donor, to give you the internship or to give you the experience or take a chance on you when the jersey comes off. When the jersey's
Hmm.
on, you're still a player. It speaks something about you, that you're trying to be proactive, and you're actually, putting your best foot forward and trying to get experience while you're still immersed in this once in a lifetime opportunity. You see that, this isn't longevity. This isn't forever. That always it piques people's interest more when you're in the locker room, rather than, when you walk across that stage, or you step off that field for the last time, and now you're looking for an opportunity. So I just say that the guys that really indulge themselves and they take the opportunity for everything that it is, more than just the Saturdays between the white lines in the fall throughout their career, the ones that really take advantage of everything, those are the guys that are successful. And it's kind of inevitable. As long as you follow the plan, especially, I mean, humbly, I say this, as long as you follow the things in the plan that we have in action, or in play for you at the University of Oregon, you will be successful. It's really hard
Yep.
to not be successful.
So, one of the things that I always preach about when I talk, um, there and at other schools is just how everything is so tailored for them, right? The money is one thing, and that is a great reward and bonus, but you got someone telling you when to show up, what to do, what it looks like every hour. And once you're out of that bubble, that does not exist. So if you can't take advantage of it in that building where you have every reason ev- you've been brought there as an athlete and no one is invested in you failing, right? Everyone's
Yeah.
invested in you having success and playing well on Saturdays and be leaving Oregon a better place than it was before you came. So it's
Hmm.
one of those things where the guys, to me, always have to understand that the hand holding, the resources that are available to them are not going to, it's a fine window and it's something you're going to learn. You're not going to look back and it's never going to be overblown, right? It's going to be, damn, why didn't I take advantage of it? And I know that's got to be tough when you see guys that you invest in that that didn't make the most of it.
Right. It is. I mean, it's very hard. And but you just see your younger self, you see your old teammates in these guys. And it's like I'm not going to leave them hanging because there's a
Yep,
whole lot more life to live. And some people, the light turns on, at different times, and some people are more fortunate than others. But even those that are unfortunate, that are in unfortunate situations, you still try to help them out.
absolutely, absolutely. So with that, it segues nicely into my next question. What would if you had to go back, right? Back, I guess almost a what decade now, almost around a decade. What advice would you give your younger self, thinking about your time in college and things that you wish you had known and all that. Despite all the success you've had, we've all made mistakes or um obviously experience is the greatest teacher. What advice would you give your younger self?
Well, first of all, easy, man. I said I graduated in 2020, so that was about five. It's my fifth year off the field, so it's not a decade yet.
Yeah. Oh,
Uh,
I'm sorry. I meant like from freshman year,
I
senior
got
year
you.
high
All
school.
right, then yeah, it is almost it is almost a decade. Um, Honestly, man, I think I would tell myself, I would encourage myself to talk to people more. You see random people walking around the building, and you just think there's some random person or maybe a fan or something. But even if they are a fan, just engage with them, have a conversation. You never know who they are. And more often than not, now that I'm sitting in this chair, I know that like you're not having any just random people just walking around the building. So they may be somebody. And you never want to use people just because of who they are, but it's networking. How can you find a commonality between you and another person? How can you strike up a conversation? How can you articulate, what your visions, what your goals are, and then just find out about who they are, and create a relationship with the person. And so I would say that I was kind of that person that I would always go to the extracurriculars, go to SAC, and participate in discretionary, programs and opportunities and stuff like that. But I wouldn't necessarily say I was the most extroverted person. And when I would see people, I'd probably just walk past, say hi, and just keep walking. But I would encourage my younger self to really just be more of an outgoing, bubblier, more person, to just engage with people. And you never know where those relationships could end up. So networking more, I would say, is probably something that I would go back on.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's a tough thing for anybody. And I think to the heart of it, it's because it makes you vulnerable,
Yeah,
right? It's vulnerable to go up at someone and strike a conversation or say, what do you do? Or, and I think one of the things for me, I read a lot and a lot of the books that I read are about the power of authenticity and vulnerability. And I read a quote about how if you go back in time, most of the great things that happen in your life, there's some vulnerability attached to it, whether it's falling in love or getting a great job or the relationships that you build with people, being vulnerable is at the center of that. So I like that advice.
yeah,
And then in terms of your career, right, you're director of player development at 28 at one of the top programs in the country. What
yeah.
long term, we talk about goal setting and things and the importance of obviously being where your feet are. But for you, have you thought about aspirations or things long term that you want to do in the sports space?
Yeah, I mean, I think I aspire to, be responsible for setting a culture, with the head coach, being a number two in a program, hiring the right individuals, inspiring the individuals within our organization, pushing them to be great, understanding how everything is flowing and making sure that the organization is moving on one accord, and we're firing on all cylinders. Also, recruiting and acquiring the best talent in the country, and ultimately winning a national championship. And the role for that is in today's infrastructure is GM slash chief of staff. A lot of organizations structure it different. Some organizations have two people for those roles, so one GM
Mhm.
and one chief of staff. Some people kind of group them into one. I don't necessarily think I have a preference for either one. I just want to do the work, and I want to be responsible for that. And I think pouring into people and bringing the best out of them is something that I'm really good at. Understanding who people are and finding, their deficiencies and, honing in on that and, helping them helping them elevate their skills is something that I think I'm really good at, and so that's something I aspire to do for a college organization here first, and we'll see. Maybe the NFL is in my future, whatever God has planned for me. But from what He's put on my heart, what I've seen and observed, in my experience so far, that's where I really see myself flourishing and being successful in. So I would say probably GM, chief of staff role is what I aspire to be.
Awesome, awesome. Well, you will be a great one. And obviously we know that the demands or the hours are crazy. You're
Yeah.
never really off, right? You're always dealing with guys. But when you mentioned being at the Gunner concert, what do you kind of do to unwind when in those times that you have to be with friends or be by yourself? How do you kind of spend your free time?
Yeah, I mean, I would say just being around, my loved ones, being around my friends, my family. We could just be kicking it on the couch, watching TV, and just telling stories or playing games and stuff like that. Lydia Gibbs, our director of recruiting here, her and I and her cousin JR, he just joined our staff, working with the DBs. And so we always do family dinner on Thursday nights. So we invite people over, just having that camaraderie. I love listening to music. I love working out. I love being active. So all those things are things that I kind of let me come out of my shell or just have some easy going downtime.
Awesome, awesome. Last question for you. What advice would you give, young people in the space or maybe older people who hear what you're saying and want to take something from it? It can be, obviously there's a lot of people that work in athletics that aspire to be in player development roles and beyond. What are some things as you're still learning, but you can say, hey, I've been in this for a little while now. What advice would you give someone?
I would say just be where your feet are. Try to flourish wherever you are. Understand the whole infrastructure of a program, how everything's running, who people are. Again, to that networking comment that I made or note that I made. Making yourself known. Being friendly. Allowing people to see you as a friendly face, um, and I would say communication is huge. I think that's something that I've learned the hard way. And it wasn't egregious, but just understanding, different people's communication styles, how they like, information being relayed. Some head coaches want to be in the know of everything. Some don't. Some really trust you to do your job, and they expect you to go out and execute, and they don't have to hold your hand. Then you bring them into the know on the high points. Things that they really really need to know, imperative, topics. But I think those are the two most important, things that these guys that people should hone in on or understand.
Awesome, awesome. And I love the idea of being where your feet are. I think in life we're so often focused on what's next, and something that I heard, I'm still always taking it in. I'm really trying to use this as 2026 is like if you can't be happy where you're at, you're not going to be happy where you're going. All
One
right.
thousand percent.
And I think it is one of the truest statements that you can have. We're always thinking about what we don't have, but thinking about where we are at any given time and being where our feet are. So
Yeah.
I appreciate you coming on, Ooze. You are in a pretty good spot right now. You guys are in the college football playoff. You were the director of player development at University of Oregon, which is awesome. Not bad at 28.
Yeah. Appreciate it, man. The
Well,
sky's the limit. Gotta keep
I
going.
appreciate you, man, and we'll catch up with you soon.
Yes, sir.